Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a stack of sources you gave us on a topic that is um, profoundly human, incredibly widespread, and yet so stubbornly difficult to discuss, honestly. We're talking about loneliness.
We are. It's
Right.
truly the silent ache. And what I think is so helpful about the sources we have is that they immediately challenge that common assumption.
That being physically alone is the same as feeling lonely.
Exactly. They are not the same thing.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We want to move past the surface level definition to really understand this fundamental human signal, this internal feeling of disconnection.
Right.
Loneliness, right out of the gate, it's about connection, isn't it? Not just raw numbers.
It's entirely about connection. It's the feeling of being unseen or unheard or not understood, and that can happen no matter how many people around you.
You could be in a crowd, even with your own family, and still feel that distance.
Mm-hmm. That internal emotional state is the core difference we really need to nail down.
Okay, so let's start there with that foundational distinction. On one side, you have solitude, or, just being alone.
Which is a physical reality, the absence of other people.
And the sources point out that for many people, that's a choice. It can be calming, restorative, even feel safe.
But loneliness, on the other hand, that's purely emotional isolation. It's the distress that pops up from a gap between the connection you want and the connection you actually have.
So it's a deficit.
An emotional one, yeah, not a physical one.
I found the poetic descriptions in the sources really resonant, defining it as feeling empty or separated, or I think one said silence inside the heart.
That's a great one.
It just captures that sense that a vital piece of human exchange is missing.
Yes, and crucially, it's not always some big dramatic feeling. It can creep up on you, Sometimes it's quiet and pervasive, just this low-level hum of distance.
And other times.
Other times it hits you suddenly, a sharp realization that you're adrift, and often you can't even point to a clear reason why. It's just an internal system telling you something fundamental is off balance.
So if you're listening right now, just take a moment to think about that. When was the last time you were surrounded by people, maybe even laughing, but inside you felt completely invisible?
That emotional isolation,
Yeah.
that's the territory we're exploring.
Okay, so that idea of emotional isolation, it leads us right into the why. Why is this signal going off for so many people right now? The sources point to external forces, like modern life and, of course, technology.
Right. The external triggers often involve huge life changes when familiar people are just gone after a move or a job change, a breakup.
Or losing a loved one.
Devastating, yeah. Loneliness just fills that void. It's a predictable loss of your community.
But then there are the more ambient pressures of modern society itself. We're talking long work hours, constant stress, just high-speed living.
And this creates what the sources call functional relationships.
Functional relationships, so interactions that are short, task-oriented.
And completely devoid of any real emotional exchange. I mean, think about a typical office. You might spend 10 hours physically next to a colleague,
Sure.
but you're only ever talking about the project, the deadline, the commute. The cognitive load of modern life just leaves people too exhausted to invest the energy needed for true vulnerability.
We're together, but we're not actually connecting.
Not at any meaningful depth, no.
Which, of course, brings us to technology, the thing that promised to connect us all. It's fascinating how the sources suggest our digital lives often make loneliness worse.
What's essential here is the quality of the connection. Technology is amazing for connecting us across distance, but when we mostly communicate through, say, text messages,
You lose all the nonverbal cues.
all of them, the tone, the body language, that immediate feedback, the messages can feel empty or unreal because they just lack the richness that builds trust and intimacy.
And then you have the comparison trap, the one that's just built into social media.
Oh, it's brutal.
It's not just seeing a happy photo, is it? It's comparing your own messy, unedited internal life, your process, with everyone else's perfectly curated outcome.
Exactly. You're seeing a highlight reel, knowing your own life as a drama, and that difference is so painful. It deepens the sadness because it feeds this narrative that you're the only one struggling or being left out.
When in reality, everyone is comparing their behind the scenes to a fantasy.
A manufactured fantasy.
So if external forces are creating these systemic barriers, what about the internal walls? The ones we build ourselves. This is where the analysis of emotional barriers comes in.
Absolutely. The sources really highlight this deep-rooted fear of rejection or judgment or just being fundamentally misunderstood.
So to guard against that pain, people just self-censor. They hide their true beliefs, their difficult
Their
feelings.
insecurities, yeah. And if you're not showing up authentically, well, deep connection is basically impossible,
You're presenting a guarded self that nobody can truly reach.
which guarantees the isolation continues. It's a protective mechanism that just tragically backfires.
And this looks different across life stages, I imagine, even if the feeling's the same.
It does. You see it in kids who feel ignored and then they withdraw, believing that being quiet is safer than risking not being accepted.
And you definitely see it in older age, often from things you just can't change. Friends passing away, health limiting your mobility, family being far away.
It's an isolation imposed by life itself in a way, but I think it's really important we dive into maybe the most painful version of this,
Okay.
the loneliness that exists within a relationship. We have this idea that a marriage or a partnership is the ultimate shield against loneliness.
But the sources say that's just not true.
Tragically false in many cases.
So that raises a really challenging question. What happens when presence doesn't equal connection? When you share a home, a life with someone, but feel that emotional loneliness?
It's one of the most acute forms of emotional pain, I think, because the expectation of intimacy is so high. It happens when communication is weak or feelings aren't being genuinely shared anymore.
Or your needs are just being ignored?
Consistently ignored, yeah. You're physically there, but the person closest to you is almost looking through you, not really seeing you. The psychological distance is made so much worse by the physical closeness.
And tied to that is the pain of feeling unseen on an identity level.
Right.
Maybe your core values or life choices are just different now, and that difference is always ignored.
Or minimized. If your identity is constantly being dismissed by the very people you expect to affirm you, that pain can be just as profound as being physically alone. The loneliness isn't in the absence of people, it's in the absence of affirmation.
Okay, that synthesis gives us a really crucial reframe. So let's zoom out. If this feeling is so painful and so widespread, the sources argue we have to redefine what loneliness actually is.
Right.
It's not a moral failing. It's not a personal weakness.
It's a signal, a fundamental signal. But before we get to the signal, we have to acknowledge the serious impact.
The effects.
The effects. Long-term loneliness has measurable physical effects. It puts the body in a state of chronic stress. That affects mood, sleep, energy, motivation.
So tiredness, sadness, hopelessness.
All of it. It's a serious public health concern, not just a fleeting bad mood.
But the key takeaway here, for you listening, is the reframe. Loneliness is an internal alarm. It's your system signaling a deficit, a fundamental need for meaning and belonging. It is not a sign that you are broken.
Or unlikable.
Right.
And that reframing is so essential because we have to talk about the shame, the tremendous shame around this feeling. Why is it so hard to just say, I am lonely?
Because society, especially Western society, just valorizes hyper-independence.
Mm.
The sources suggest we're taught that successful adults should never need anyone else.
So if you admit you're lonely, the internal voice, and sometimes the external judgment, is that you've somehow failed to achieve that.
Which, of course, makes people hide their feelings, and that just creates a toxic cycle of deeper isolation.
We have to counter that narrative.
Right.
Forcefully. Loneliness is a universal human emotion. It's proof that you're wired for connection, just like hunger is proof you're wired for food.
So by accepting it as a message, not a mistake.
We can finally start to decode what it's telling us. We need presence, we need meaning, and we need to be truly heard.
Which brings us to the most practical and, I think, hopeful part of this deep dive, the healthy responses. The good news is that rebuilding connection doesn't require some radical life change.
No, it starts with incredibly small steps.
The first step being to just redefine what connection even is.
Exactly. It's not about finding a soulmate tomorrow or joining a huge club. Connection starts simply. Choosing intentional vulnerability, not just saying hello, but genuinely sharing a small, real thought or feeling.
And then listening. Listening with deep care when someone shares back.
And crucially, the sources emphasize this process has to start internally, by being kind to yourself, that internal self-criticism.
This something is wrong with me voice.
That's the voice. That's what accelerates the pain.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of compassion, the kinder thought is transformational, isn't it?
Completely. The thought, I am lonely because I am a human being with a basic need for belonging, not because I failed at life. That one shift can change the emotional response from self-loathing to self-care.
And it introduces these powerful concepts of self-compassion and, maybe more importantly, self-connection.
Learning how to be alone without feeling lonely.
Which isn't about ignoring the world. It's about internal resilience.
Self-connection is really about three things: understanding your feelings, accepting yourself, and respecting your own needs. Practically, that means when loneliness shows up, you don't criticize it. You comfort it. You recognize it as a valid emotion.
And when you learn to meet your own needs for stillness, for acceptance,
You dramatically reduce your desperate reliance on other people to fill that void.
that reduction in desperation, I think that's the key. When you're no longer terrified of being alone, you can approach new connections from a place of genuine curiosity and health, not from a place of clinging need.
And there's such immediate relief in just knowing this is a shared experience. Research shows loneliness is far more common than people ever assume. So many people feel it, they just hide it really well.
Knowing that it's a universal condition, it just reduces the shame. Ironically, this very pain point isolation is actually what connects all of us.
We're all, at some point, feeling that silent ache.
Loneliness is painful, yes, but its presence shows the profound importance of our relationships.
It holds up a mirror to our need for understanding, for care, for real intimacy. The goal of this isn't to live a life totally free of loneliness, that's impossible, but to learn how to meet that feeling with honesty and care when it shows up.
You are not broken because you feel lonely. You're simply human, responding to an internal signal for connection. That is all it is.
The ability to understand this ache, to accept it without shame, and to decode its message, that's the first and most powerful step toward compassion, both for yourself and for everyone else you meet.
So here's our final thought for you to carry forward. What small, kind step can you take today towards sharing a genuine thought or feeling with someone? Or maybe toward just listening carefully to your own internal needs for peace and affirmation. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.